But I wanted to ask you, what's an example of, as you said that you often, that you're at the Met trying to showcase people with disabilities
Mhm.
within the art. Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, so I think what I meant, I mean, it's first in our staff. We have, and myself, I have a disability. A lot of people who work on our team have a disability, and people who teach our program, the access programs, also have disabilities, and we really encourage our staff also to, in our hiring practices, we really are. Um, um, Building a process where people with disabilities can feel that they can apply and that there are accommodations so that they can go through the application process. But in terms of the collection, what it means is that so the concept of disabilities hasn't existed for that long. But if you look at works from the Renaissance or even before, I am sure, and it's actually an interesting example, but there are many representations of the miracles of that Christ accomplished. Christ healing the lame, Christ healing the blind, and those representations um, have been kind of used across centuries. Um, and or there can be also, I'm thinking of blind Homer, or in ancient Egypt and ancient Greece, there are actually a really impressive number of dwarfs. They were actually, part of the courts, used often as entertainment. In some ways, they were kind of the buffon of a court. But there are also examples of a scribe in ancient Egypt who was a dwarf. Then we can think also, so it's speaking of representation of disabilities in works of art, and then also of artists who had disabilities. One that might come to people and that might be controversial is Van Gogh, who had mental illness, and others that might be actually less known. I mean, of course, Monet is another one. He had a visual impairment. And another one that might be less known is actually Camille Pissarro. So it's really interesting with him because when all the Impressionist painter were going to outside of Paris and paint in plein air, he stayed in the city. And the reason why he stayed in the city and that we have us now so kind of famous bird eye view of a city, it's because he had a vision impairment. Actually, light was really impacting his vision. So he was painting from his apartment. So it's interesting to think here of how disability was in many ways a creative force for the artist. And so we are, I think it's important that the narratives in an art historical context are actually that we engage with them. Because what happens when so many images of people with disabilities are put in front of people's eyes and not questions, we take them for what they are. And I could have a more nuanced conversation about Christ healing the blind, and I understand that there is a religious metaphor and a need for making faith tangible. But truth is that oftentimes we have a blind person who is kneeling down, who is at a lower position than Christ, and oftentimes people with disabilities are seen as having a lack of something, and that stays across the edges. That's a stereotype that still happens. So it's also a way to challenge that, how people challenging how people with disabilities are viewed. So yeah, we've been working with other educators, curators, disabled artists, disability studies scholars, to really think of how can we have those narratives being uplifted or engaged with at least. And for some, we don't have like specific solution, but I think it's just important to making it part of a public conversation.
Yeah, it's very, very important and also very interesting perspective to take and to, yeah, very important perspective as well.